Well, hello there, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. How are you doing today? Today, we're talking about the key to English fluency. The key to becoming fluent in a language, and specifically we are focusing on English. Ta-da! So this is the plan for today. Please do interact with the chat, which is over there on PC or laptop, and if you're on a mobile device you can find the live chat below this video. So let's see who we have here today. Hello Anonymous, English for Today, spamming the chat. How are you doing, English for Today? Hello Julia. Hello Ashley Chen. Hello Romelia. Pallavi, Manuel Gordillo, and we have been joined by Domenico Fauci and Vladimir. All right. So the key to English fluency. Let's start with some ideas of what I might mean with the trick to learning fluent English. I'm going to show you a list, a word cloud. Actually, this is a word cloud. I'm going to show you a word cloud of vocabulary related to this idea. And I want you to talk about these options in the chat. Talk about these. What do you think is most important? Do you know what these things mean? And can you think of any other important elements to learning a language? So we have constant practice, persistence, English immersion, vocabulary, grammar mastery, confidence, and feedback and correction. So what do you guys think? Which of these do you think are the most important to learn fluent English? And do you have any questions about any of them? If you have any questions during the stream, then ask your questions in the chat. That's over there on PC, down there on mobile, and I will do my best to answer those questions. Good afternoon, Pavia. Hello there, Zoya. Arta, nice to see you. So Romelius says that being proactive, inquisitive, question everything, and learn actively. She says that's very important. Dreamer says hello, everyone. Hello, Dreamer. And hello, Nipa Begum. Whoa, my coffee is like rocket fuel today. Actually, it tastes like rocket fuel as well. I think I made it a bit too strong. It tastes like I'm drinking tar. It's like Italian espresso, but half a cup worth of it. So Anonymous says vocabulary. Let's have some discussion here. So if you think one of these things is most important, can you also say why? So if you think it's important in the chat, say why. Why is it important? Dreamer says confidence, question mark. Yes, some people say being confident is the most important thing. What do you think? Zoya said, I would add lots of listening. That's very interesting, Zoya. Listening. There's some important things to say about listening, though. It must be comprehensible listening. That means you listen to things you can understand. That doesn't mean you understand all the words, but it means you can understand the message. So you listen to things you can understand. And that will improve your vocabulary, your passive vocabulary. This was a theory by Stephen Krashen, which we will talk about later. Hello, Ana Maria in Uruguay. How are you doing? I I think you're the first student in the Prof. Rich chat from Uruguay. Remelia says reading is the most important. So people are coming up with lots of different ideas. Can we have some more justification? English immersion helps me understand the context easily, says Anawat. Yeah, I mean, that is one of the advantages of immersion, is that immersion puts you in the context. You have no choice. You're surrounded by authentic context to learn in. So it's a big advantage of the idea of immersion. The context is all there. And if you're not immersed in the language, if you're, for example, reading from a book or looking at a website, maybe you don't have the full context. Hey, everyone, do smash that like button. Let's send the message out. Everyone's saying hello to everyone. That's wonderful. You need to be proactive in learning new vocabulary, says Domenico Lafauci, by reading news articles about anything using your news app. I typically start my mornings by reading various different types of news, I guess. English immersion is very important. Remember to give reasons. So treat the chat like a conversation here. So why? Why is it important, do you think? So Pallavi says, knowing vocabulary and English grammar and listening can help us to become fluent. How, Pallavi? Manuel, why do you think confidence is important? And what happens when you don't have that? Manuel also mentions feedback and correction and the connection to having a teacher. Yes, that's right. So feedback and correction, one of the main ways to get that is with a teacher. And it's a big advantage of having a teacher is that you get feedback and correction. English immersion plays a pivotal role in learning your targeted language. Is it necessary, though, Julia? I think English immersion is advantageous. It gives you an advantage, but is it necessary? Do you need to be immersed? Some people say if you want to learn English, you must go and live in an English-speaking country. I don't agree with that because I have students who have learned English without living in an English-speaking country. But I do think English immersion can be a big advantage. Can be. All right, so there's lots of different things we could say about this. Nipa says vocabulary is the most important part and grammar is the backbone of the language. Okay. And Pavia says, I'm off, goodbye, and disappears. All right, see you later, Pavia. Manuel says, I invest myself, not in the stock market. Oh, I invest in myself. Yeah, I once heard, actually, that the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. All right, Pavia, good luck. So, again, Anna Maria saying English immersion is the most important. Okay, so I think you can argue about these different areas. And actually, in a moment, I'm going to give you my answer, which is totally different and mentions other things here. By the way, if anyone has something to add that I don't have here, then please mention that, because in a moment, I'm going to tell you something totally different to what I have on there. Totally different. But let me give you my order of these in importance. So personally, I would actually put vocabulary as one of the highest there. And I think after vocabulary, I'm going to say practice, persistence, feedback and correction, maybe English immersion, grammar mastery, and confidence. They're all important, by the way. Confidence is important, but this is my order anyway of those. However, now I'm going to give you a totally different answer. Totally different answer. So, English for Today says, bye everyone. Are you going? English for Today? What happened? Right. So here's my answer. What's the key? What's the trick to learning fluent English? It's something like this. Sustainable, passionate, long-term, practical, and reflective. So this is talking about how you learn. So we could actually put, after this, we could put the word method or learning. Let's put learning. Sustainable learning, passionate learning, long-term learning, practical learning, and reflective learning. This is the key to becoming fluent in English, from my perspective. So we're going to talk about what these things mean: sustainable, passionate, long-term, practical, and reflective. You can give your perspective, give your opinion now in the chat on what you think. What do you think I mean by these different areas? But we are going to start with sustainable. And when I say sustainable, I'm not talking about carbon emissions and solar energy. I'm talking about a different kind of sustainable. Anonymous says, sometimes I don't understand anything because I lack vocabulary or I don't know how to say something. Exactly, Anonymous. I think that vocabulary is the most important out of the words from before. But now we're talking about method. And Domenico has made a comment about fossilized errors. I agree with that, Domenico, but I also think people obsess too much about fossilized errors. And there's a lot of evidence that fossilized errors will self-correct when you're ready for them to correct. I have a colleague where I currently work who is the most experienced teacher I've ever met. She has taught so many different things. She knows all the methodology. She has ran language schools. She's trained teachers, and she's coming to the end of her career. And it's very interesting to talk to her about stuff. And she says, we realized that additive learning is not how people learn languages in the 1980s. Additive learning. So additive learning is the idea you learn the present simple, and then you learn the past simple, and then you learn the present continuous, and then you learn, right? It's this sort of structure. Like, oh, now you learn this, now you learn this, now you learn this. People, rather, they don't learn languages like that. But even though we know this from the studies in the 1980s, every single course book is structured in an additive manner. And additive learning places a large emphasis on preventing fossilization of errors. There's another way of learning, though, which is organically structured. And rather than emphasizing fossilized errors and preventing those errors, it accepts that fossilized errors will self-correct with reflection and a positive student who continually moves forward. Hello, Iran. We have a whole country in the chat. So, what do I mean by sustainable? Well, let me show you. I'm talking about something where you can keep going. That's a key part. So think about your English learning. Think about your method. You can keep going. Is that true about your method, or does it feel like you're exhausted? If you feel exhausted or tired, then you need to change your method, because you need a learning method where you can keep going, right? It doesn't finish. You don't run out of energy. You don't run out of concentration. You have a method where you can keep going, and you do it the next day and the next day, and you still like it and you still like it, and it's not boring, and you don't want to stop. So basically, you don't burn out, right? We don't want to use methods where you burn out. Not unless you're a special type of person, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or a Domenico Fauci, where you like this kind of heated, intense 6-hour-a-day study. This can often be very good for academics. People who are going to study PhDs, they can do this kind of hard, white light, real strong, this white fire, burning hot way of learning. But for most people, they burn out with that kind of learning. So we don't want that. We don't want to push really hard. We want our method to be sustainable. We want to learn English constantly and realize that we don't want to cause ourselves to dislike learning. We want to like the method, enjoy the method. It's sustainable. If you want to know more about this, you can see research from Dionier, Gardner, Dwalier, or Pavlenko. These are all relatively big names in language learning and teaching. And if you look at their research, which is part of the homework, then you'll find this is scientifically substantiated, that a language learning method that is sustainable has much greater chance of success, especially Dionier. He is very influential in modern language learning. Any comments or questions about this? Passion makes it sustainable. Yes, from Elia, I'm going to talk about that. That's coming up. Pilly C says, hi, Rich. Hi, teacher. Hello. Vladimir says, I saw entrainment just before class. Entrainment. I'm not entirely certain what that means. Pallavi says, I listen to English podcasts. Can that help me become fluent? No, it can help your comprehension, which can help you become fluent. So yeah, as 2-step, yes, it can. Listening to podcasts is great. The question I have, Pallavi, is, do you understand the podcast? Do you understand 70%? If not, find an easier podcast. But it will help your passive vocabulary. It will help your receptive learning. The burning desire to keep going, Julia. Yes, but what causes the burning desire? And Manuel says if you push too hard, you can burn out. That's right. Unwavering determination. Well, yeah, that helps. But it's more about finding things where you don't need to push hard because you want to do it. For example, playing video games in English, or in Pallavi's case, listening to interesting English podcasts, right? Okay, let's move on to the next one then. So the next one is passionate, and I've put and personal, passionate and personal. So this is heavily connected, of course, to sustainable. And I haven't even changed the picture, which that's not very good. Let me get a new picture for this. Passionate. Ooh, Google Images for passionate is a bit spicy. Let's do a slightly... there we go. That looks okay. There, let's go for that. It's someone with clothes on, which is better, isn't it? Okay, so passionate and personal. This obviously relates to sustainable. So in other words, your learning should be enjoyable, engaging, and interesting. Or at least one of those things. Are you interested now in what I'm talking about? Is this enjoyable? Am I being engaging? As a teacher, I always try to be these things for students. I want the class to be enjoyable, engaging, and interesting. That is my aim. It's my number one aim as a teacher. For me, it's more important than teaching new words. It's more important than grammar. It's more important than anything. If I can make a class that's enjoyable, engaging, and interesting, then everything else will fall into place. As long as the students actually do stuff. And that's why there's more to this method. So far we have sustainable and passionate, but there's more steps. Okay? So what do you think about that? Enjoyable, engaging, and interesting. If you want to know more about that, you can check out research from Stephen Krashen, James Asher, Paul Nation, Rebecca Oxford, and again, Diornier. So Krashen and Asher talk about this a lot. Passion is the name of the game, says Zoya. Yeah, do you ever notice that the subjects you like at school are also the subjects you become good at? Like, it's not often someone says, I like maths, but I'm not good at it. Oh, I love biology, but I'm really bad at biology. Doesn't happen very often, right? If you like something, you're good at it. Because you keep doing it. So passion, really important. Enjoyable, interesting, engaging. What is engaging? What's the difference between enjoyable and engaging? What is the difference between enjoyable and engaging? Yeah, that makes sense, Domenico. What you're talking about is you have an academic mindset. And this is something where we realize there is no one size fits all. Instead, we need to consider horses for courses, right? In other words, it has to be individual. Has to be individual. So for you, Domenico, as someone who likes to really push to the edge, then a slightly different approach can work. You don't need to worry so much about sustainable. For you, it might be more about goal setting and trying to push harder and trying to do more hours of study and trying to really focus hard when you study. Julia says, when it comes to learning English, I'm intrigued and captivated by surfing articles and podcasts, which I enjoy to boost my passion. That's perfect, Julia, especially for receptive vocabulary. So Zoya says, enjoyable means you like it. Engaging means you participate. That's not quite my definition. So I would say enjoyable is yes, you like it. Engaging is it's difficult and enjoyable. Yeah, Dreamer kind of has it. So Dreamer says engagement requires some effort. That's how I see it. So engagement, it's like you need effort, but it's challenging and interesting and you want to do it. Yes, hi English for today. I have noticed you. Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. So, smash that like button, by the way. Hit the like button. That's right, everybody. Smash that like button. Hit the like button. Just smash the like button, okay? Right. Okay, next. Next one was long term. Now, you see these advertisements, learn English in a month. This is an ambiguous and nebulous statement to make, right? We have to consider English as a long-term project. Really, all your life, but I don't want to depress you. So let's say years, if you want to go from beginner to fluent. I think the minimum you can do that in for 99.99% of people is 3 years. You can do it in 3 years if you have all the advantages. You have a teacher, you have immersion, you're doing intensive courses, you have an interest, right? If you have everything in your favor, 3 years from beginner to fluent, you can do that. But for most people, if you want advanced, you want a really good level, you might be talking 5 years. And then realistically, when you get your job in biochemistry, you'll probably need to push your English again to get to the next level so you can understand all the vocabulary in biochemistry and so on. So we want to consider long term. We're not going to say, right, I'm going to learn English in 3 months. It's a bad way to see it. You can have goals, but don't have your learn English as a goal. That's not a good goal, right? Your goal should be pass B2 or get an advanced level or get 7 in IELTS, right? These are good goals, not learn English. It's too nebulous. It's like saying, I'm going to learn guitar in 3 years. What does that mean, learn guitar? What, like Jimi Hendrix? Or like some Baroque guitar? Or to perform? Or what? You know, it makes no sense. So you can't learn English in a week. You can't learn English in a month, and you can't learn English in a year. The expression here is Rome wasn't built in a day. Language learning is something that goes on and on and on. Okay, so we don't want to say, right, I'm going to learn English in a year. Forget that. You can have goals with a time limit, but the goal is not learn English. Learn English will keep going on. I'm learning English. Right? And you're learning your own language. You still see new words. You still have new contexts. We still hear new accents, right? Sometimes, even as a teacher, sometimes I hear an accent and I'm like, whoa, not heard that before, right? I remember when I first heard the Israeli accent. That was a new one for me about 5 years ago. And I was like, whoa, what is that? Learning English is similar to losing weight. I think losing weight can be more short-term, actually, than learning English. Yeah, I think learning English is more of a long-termy thing. Just, it's just something that keeps going on, right? It's kind of like learning to be a better person. There's no end to learning to be a better person, right? You just keep going. Romelia. And so Romelia says an interesting point. She says, Rich, what about C2? How long does it take to get C2? So the thing about C2, Romelia, is that C2 is a synthetic level. It's an academic level that is beyond the usage of most English speakers, including many native English speakers. So C2 might well take longer. And actually, to get C2, really the kind of Domenico Fauci approach is useful, and it's a good way of doing it. You kind of have to get into the right prepositions and the grammar and study 6 hours a day. And everyone I know who passes proficiency C2, any students I've had, they're like that, because C2 is a synthetic level. It's not a natural level of English. It's a level of English achieved by a real academic understanding and a very, very broad vocabulary. Many English speakers would fail the proficiency exam without having special preparation. Those who claim you can get fluency in a few months are crooks. Yes. Or it's a marketing strategy. I think most of the time it's a marketing strategy. But yes, they're kind of lying. And they're using an ambiguity because learn English is ambiguous. Yeah, I can say, learn English in 1 day. Yeah, and I can teach you some stuff and you will learn English, but it sounds ambiguous. So if you want to know more about these, you can see research from John Schumann, Robert de Keyser, or I love these guys, Lightbound and Spada. Now, Lightbound and Spada, they wrote a book called How Languages Are Learned. And it's kind of the Bible of communicative language teachers in terms of how people acquire language. It's really not a fun book to read. I really did not enjoy reading it, but it's one of the most well-referenced books that you can find on the subject of how languages are learned. And it talks about native, non-native, bilingual, people who learn as adults, and it compares everyone. And it's very interesting as a language learner. You have to read it. If you are a language teacher, then Lightbound and Spada is must read. But I found their writing style not particularly fun, put it that way. So long term. Okay, moving on. The next thing was practical. So why would I say practical? Practical. What do I mean by practical? What do I mean by practical? Why practical? Nipa says, there are some people you can find on YouTube saying you can learn English in 1 hour. Yeah, that's just marketing, isn't it? The thing about YouTube is it places a great emphasis on people clicking your video. So you get rewarded if people click and then if people stay. These are the two big things on YouTube now. It's a click and then stay with me. So, yeah, so people want you to click and they'll say anything, actually, to get you to click. So when I say practical, what I'm doing is I'm contrasting that with theory. So if we look at the word practical, practice comes from Latin. We have the word pract, which means to perform or act. Pract. Pract means to perform or act. Is just the suffix for a noun. Practice. So performance or acting. So in other words, I'm emphasizing action over theory. Language is less about knowledge and more about skill. Now, knowledge is important and it can give you an advantage with language. However, skill is more important. That means practice is more important. So that's why I emphasize a practical method. Language is a skill, not a science. Okay? Actually, language is also a science, but I don't believe in the science of language. I believe in language as a skill. It's like, for example, the science of guitar playing. Would you rather learn to play guitar or do you want to learn the science of guitar playing? Do you think the science of guitar playing will help you to learn guitar? How much? So language is a skill, not a science. I think the metaphor of a musical instrument is really appropriate. It's very, very similar. Learning a language is very similar to learning to play a musical instrument. It's probably the best parable that I've found. And if you want to know more about that, you can read research from Stephen Krashen, James Asher, Michael Lewis. One of my big influencers, Michael Lewis, was the founder of The Lexical Approach. Vygotsky, Meryl Swain, Douglas Brown, Michael Long, Jack Richards, Claire Cranch, and millions of other people. So if you want to learn about how language is a skill and practice is more important than theory, then there's many, many people you can read there. Practical, go straight forward, put down, avoid silly questions that could delay your teaching. See, it's interesting to see Manuel say this because actually this practical part is a strength for Manuel, right? Manuel is very, very, very good at practicing. So, where does Manuel have a problem? This is an interesting question. right? We can consider these different things. Does Manuel have a sustainable method? He does. He's my student. We have classes. I know his method is sustainable. Is he passionate about what he does in English? Yes, he is. Does he have a long-term approach? Yes, he does. He keeps going and he considers learning English to be part of his life. Is he practical? Yes, absolutely. Manuel is very strong when it comes to practice. So where could Manuel improve on his method? Well, in this one. So the final element, I mentioned reflective. So an interesting thing about a reflective method, what can we say? Basically, if you do all the other things, but you don't have any reflection, by the way, Manuel does have reflection. I'm just saying he could have more. Without feedback or self-reflection, practice can be unproductive practice. Okay? Let me give you an example. Of what happens with unproductive practice, right? So, I don't want to be too mean here, so I'm going to try and get a cartoon because I could show a picture of a real person, but I don't want to. So, in Spain, they have this term. They talk about these people called perroflautas, right? Now, a perroflauta, as I understand it, tell me if I'm wrong, Manuel, but I understand a perroflauta is a street musician. Normally not very good, right? And they play music on the street and they want money from you. In some of them can be very good, but most of them really not very good. Is that right, Manuel? Am I correct? Hello, Kashata. Good to see you. And hello, Shaik. Smash that like button. I'm waiting for Manuel to tell me if I'm right about perroflautas. So yeah, perroflautas are musicians on the street and they're normally not very good. Now, the interesting thing is you see these guys every day, hours and hours. Like I lived in Valencia and there was this one guy playing violin, right? And he played violin every day and you could hear him all over Valencia. Right? All over Valencia every day, hours and hours and hours. This guy was playing violin. Like pretty much 365 days a year for like 12 hours a day. Loads of practice. But he never improved, right? He wasn't really bad. He was like so-so, but his violin playing, it never got better. I heard it out my window every day, right? It didn't get better. So why didn't his violin playing get better? The guy practiced every day, 12 hours a day. Why no improvement? Well, because it's unproductive practice. He's not focused and he's not reflecting. Actually, he wasn't trying to get better. He doesn't care. He's at the level he needs to get money from people, and that's why he plays violin. Right? He plays violin on the street to get money from people. It's sufficient. He doesn't need to be like Beethoven, classical musician with an orchestra. So he didn't get better, he didn't focus, and he didn't reflect. So that's the issue. Maria del Carmen says I'm a bit wrong. Oops. Okay, but anyway, I'm talking about these street musicians who aren't very good, right? Or not aren't very good, but they're so. And they practice tons, but they don't get better because they don't have a reflective method. So you need focus and you need reflection. You need feedback. Okay? That's important. Intentional practice with measured improvement and short-term goals is the best. Okay? Intentional practice with measured improvement and short-term goals is the best. So intentional practice means I'm focusing and I'm deliberately practicing to get better. And measured improvement with short-term goals. For example, I want to be able to understand Star Trek: The Next Generation in English, or I want to be able to listen to podcasts in English, or I want to have a conversation for 20 minutes with a native speaker in English, or I want to pass the Cambridge Advanced Certificate, right? So short-term goals, measured improvement, intentional practice, and reflection. What is reflection? Reflection when you listen to yourself or you think back to your errors and you try to improve by thinking, what do I need to improve these errors in the past? What do I need to improve this? Right. Also, feedback. What's the best source or the most common source of feedback in language learning is... What is the most common source of feedback in language learning? It's a teacher or a native speaker or just any speaker. Doesn't have to be a native. And also, the feedback does not need to be, no, don't say going on, it's going to, right? The feedback doesn't need to be explicit. We can have implicit feedback, right? Which is when you say something and you can see the other person kind of goes, huh? And then you go, oh, I mean this, right? That kind of implicit feedback actually is very, very productive. So feedback does not need to be very explicit all the time. You don't need to interrupt someone and say, no, that's wrong, okay? That kind of feedback, we don't need it. Fluency is more important, so save that for only when it's critical. Most of the time, it's better not to interrupt someone with a correction like that, okay? So delayed feedback, delayed reflection, intentional practice, measured improvement. And Daisy Lee's just arrived. Hello, Daisy Lee, who is currently a hard-working member of the working community rather than being a student who doesn't do anything. I'm just kidding. Of course, as a teacher, I definitely shouldn't say that students don't do anything. So that is the overhaul there of the overall view of what I say is the key to learning fluent English. If I were to take an example also about, for one of my lessons we did recently, we talked about adjectives to describe people. Then we could ask a few questions. Is it sustainable, passionate, long-term, practical, and reflective? Well, passionate, I thought it was quite an interesting class. It had a story in there, and stories really help with engagement. So we had the story about the Misty Man and all that kind of stuff. Is it long-term? Well, it's not designed to teach you English overnight, and kind of I expect people to watch more than one lesson. So I would say yes. Practical, if you remember during that class, we did some pronunciation work where I was speaking and repeating, and also I tied that into some homework of you all writing a story and drawing a picture of a Mr. Man character. So that was my sort of practical element, and reflection was also tied into the homework where we had a follow-up class and we looked at the homework and I gave feedback based on the homework. So that was our reflective element. And the idea of it being sustainable is informed by the passion and the long-term element. So that's how I could look at this model and use it to examine and critique the way that I teach. And I also gave an example before talking about how I would critique Manuel as a language learner using this model. So that's my model about the key to language learning. Now here's your homework, and then we can move on to questions. So homework for today, I'd like you to find an article or book by one of the researchers mentioned in the notes today. So I mentioned a lot of researchers to support the theory today. You can use Google or you can use doaj.org. Now this, doaj.org, is open source academic articles. And you can find lots of articles by Asher and Krashen and Vygotsky and the people I mentioned on this website. So I want you to go there, find an article or a journal, read a part of their work. It doesn't have to be related to today. It doesn't need to be about language learning. I just want you to read something by one of the researchers I mentioned. Then, after you've read, I'd like you to record yourself giving a summary of what you understand from what you read. I want max 3 minutes. Don't go crazy. Okay? Maximum 3 minutes. A short summary of the part of their work that you read. Again, it does not have to be relevant to the class today. And please do not write a script. Just speak naturally, giving a summary like you're speaking to a friend. You don't need to write a script. I don't want to hear today I delved into the fascinating world of Stephen Krashen. We don't need all that, okay? Just speak like you're speaking normally. Say, okay, I'm going to summarize Stephen Krashen's language hypothesis. I read a small portion of his work, and this is what I understand from reading his work. Okay, so that's the task. Let's see if we have what questions. Read from where? From an article, Daisy. So as I've said, you can go to the website that I put there, which is doaj.org, and these are open source academic articles. Right? So if I go there right now to this website and I type in Krashen, okay, and I'll put articles, and we're going to put author, right? So I select Krashen, articles, author, like that. Okay, and then I go search. Right? Then just instantly it comes up with some articles. So here we go. Here's an interesting article. It says, commentary, can free reading take you all the way? So this is interesting because Romelia actually said something like that. She said that reading was the best way to learn a language. So this is from 2007, and it's a response to Cobb. Cobb's another big name in this area. Can free reading take you all the way? So we can click on that, and then we can click read online, and then we have full access to this article. Do we? We have access to this. How do we get the article? Dun, dun, dun. Well, sometimes you have to search around a little bit to actually find the articles, which is wonderful. And not that helpful. Sometimes I wish academia would come into the 21st century. You know what I mean? So allegedly, it's volume 12. Volume 12, number 1. Dunk. Yep. Almost got it. There we go. Got it. Oh, have I got it? Download PDF. Yes, I've got it. Okay, there you go. So you can actually get it, and I've got this article now, jumping through a few hoops. So now I've got this interesting commentary, and you can see I'm interested in this because we have here Cobb's claim, free reading is not sufficient. So Cobb claims that free reading does not provide sufficient opportunities for L2 readers to reach a high level of vocabulary acquisition. Brilliant. I'm fascinated already. and I want to read more. So that's what I want you to do, basically. Find an article by one of the researchers I mentioned today. Use doaj.org, and you'll have to look around for the links and do a bit of research, but you can find the articles. They are there. If you search on doaj.org, then the article is open source. It's free, so you will find it. You just need to look a bit. Any article you want, yes, Nipa. And actually, it does not need to be related to today's class, just anything. I just want you to look for those researchers and then choose an article, read a little bit and summarize it. I think it would be interesting to find what everybody see what everybody finds. Oh, I forgot to mention as well, with reflective, the paramount or the big name at the moment with reflective learning is K. Anders Ericsson. Actually, he's unfortunately dead now, but yeah, he was the big name in that area anyway. So other researchers from today, we've got Stephen Krashen, James Asher, Michael Lewis, Vygotsky, we've got Lightbound and Spada, Robert DeKaiser, John Schumann, Paul Nation, Rebecca Oxford, Zoltan Diornier, and Robert Gardner, Anita Pavlenko, and Jean-Marc Dewalier. So lots to choose from. And of course, if you want to do the homework, then you should probably download the notes from today. You can do that right now. That's right, Pallavi. You're going to read part of an article and then do a recorded audio summary. I don't want you to script it. I want you to just speak. Just tell me what you understand from the article you read. So it's a spoken academic summary of an article. A spoken academic summary of an article. This is the kind of, if I was teaching at university, if I was teaching a course at university, this is the kind of task that I would give for homework. Now, university lecturers, actually, they tend to give this task, but they make it a writing task, which I think is a mistake. So I don't want you to write. I want you to speak. I want you to tell me in audio format what's the summary of what you've read. Okay, and all of the researchers from today I've used to justify my key to learning fluent English. All right, so thank you very much, everybody. We're now moving on to questions. Thank you, Julia. I totally agree. Please, 100, 100, 100, smash that like button. It is important. And we're now into question time. So, what you got? 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 Does anyone have any questions on their mind? Should we read the article loudly or just tell what we understand? No, I just want you to give a summary, Anonymous. So, for example, you read an article, right, about Krashen, and you're like, yo, I read this 2007 article about Krashen, and he talks about how free reading can be helpful for language acquisition. And I go, oh, right, okay. Well, I've got 3 minutes before I'm going to meet my girlfriend for coffee. So why don't you tell me what's that all about? What's that all about? And then you tell me. 3 minutes. Recording. Do we send the homework to you? Yes, you do. After you've recorded yourself, please send the recording to professorrich@gmail.com or join our language learning chat, and you can send it to me on Skype by contacting me in Skype. So that's bit.ly/English learner chat, all lowercase. And remember that we have our conversation club on Saturday at 3 p.m. Be there or don't be there. Of course it won't make me laugh. Well, it might make me laugh, but if it does, that'll be good. It's always good to laugh, isn't it? It's fun. Don't worry. Accept that sometimes you'll make mistakes. Sometimes I say things that make people laugh. In fact, I often say things that make people laugh at me as well, not necessarily with me. So don't worry. We're not worried about that. If you can make people laugh, it's good. It's memorable. Memorable for you and memorable for them. We do like things to be memorable. Nobody likes their voice anonymous. It's totally normal. Don't worry about that. Completely 100% normal. Zoya had a question, said, what would you say to a student who's discouraged that they don't make sufficient progress? Yeah, it's really tough that actually, Zoya, because it's a big problem for a lot of students. And actually in language learning, we have this thing which we call the intermediate plateau. And it's really common that somewhere around intermediate level, students just feel like they're making no progress at all. And I think lots of language learning students can relate to this idea that they feel like they're in this intermediate plateau and like nothing is really happening. So I think actually a lot of students kind of experience this. And at that intermediate level, it really can just feel like it can sort of feel like nothing's really changing, you know. And that's tough. So what do you do with that? Well, in a way, I would say that the whole class today was based around that. So this whole method that we talked about today, sustainable, passionate, long-term, practical, and reflective, or this relates to how you beat the intermediate plateau. Right? This is exactly how you beat the intermediate plateau. So look for that passion. Consider that it's long-term. Use practical, everyday practice. You want to be practicing, not learning more grammar, not learning more theory, but actually practicing, and incorporate some reflection to make sure that your practice is focused practice and not unproductive practice. Now, what would I personally do as a teacher? I can give my personal assessment. Another thing that I do is I record parts of the class, and that can be good because then I can say, okay, compare the recording of yourself 6 months ago and compare that recording to now and see what difference you notice. So that can be motivational. I also encourage students to take vocabulary notes because vocabulary notes can give a good sense of progression. Another thing that I do, which can help with progression, is that we go through can-do statements, right? So at some point, I'll give you some can-do statements. I can give a presentation about dolphins in English for 5 minutes, okay? And you say 1 to 5. So 1 equals I can't, I'm not very good at this, and 5 is I'm a master at this, okay? So we have this can-do statement like that. So I give you that. Then we have our English course. And then 6 months later, I ask you again about that. And again, you give me a number. Okay. So again, this can give a sense of progression. Like, can you do that? Yes, no. Like, here's something for you. Can you give a 3-minute summary of an academic article in English? You rate yourself 1 to 5. Can you give an academic article, a summary of an academic article in English, 1 to 5? What do you feel now? And then in 6 months' time, you ask yourself the question again. Kashata says, when I'm reading a novel, I often get myself reading words that are not there. I'm on the first line, I read a word in the second line. I know what you mean, Kashata. Yeah, I kind of have that problem. I reading what, yeah. So that is actually, it's kind of a focus thing and also a reading skill. So my first question to you, Kashata, is how often do you read right now? How often do you read, and for how long do you read? Tell me. Are you reading a lot right now, Kashata? While I'm waiting for Kashata, let's see what I have. Julia says, Manuel made me recall the memory of my passive phrasal verbs in that sentence. Oh, very nice. Persistence is crucial, says Zoya. Yep. So Domenico doesn't have time because he's got to read 8 per day about the visual census. What's the visual census, Domenico? So Kashata says I read a chapter a day. Okay. So my inclination, there's a few possibilities here, Kashata, and I would need to really speak to you more and diagnose you a bit more to find out what the issue is. But my inclination here is you need more reading practice. So my diagnosis is you're not in the habit of reading, right? So my prescription is practice reading more. This is not an issue of vocabulary or anything like that. You just need to read more, okay? And whilst reading, try to focus more and read for longer periods. So maybe every day you try to read for longer periods. Now you might say, oh God, but this is so boring, the stuff I'm reading. So I would also say, choose material you want to read, right? So as well as your studies, also, I want you to choose something fun, right? It can be very easy also. It does not need to be difficult. So I want you to find things to read that are easy and fun and you want to read. So I don't know anything about your interests or how old you are or what your English is like, but you might want to try, for example, reading Enid Blyton's Famous Five. If you like that kind of thing. Nice little fun adventure story about some teenagers and vocabulary not so bad. You could try that. You could try Roald Dahl, wherever your vocabulary is at. The point is, I want it to be fun and interesting. And then you're going to try to read for longer periods every day. So to start with, you put on a clock, 5 minutes. Then next day, 10 minutes. Then 20, right? And then just keep pushing it more and more until you can read for an hour or more. And then tell me if you have the same problem or if it's better. Because I think you'll find it's a lot better. Because I think your problem comes from focus, reading focus. And that's something you'll find will improve with just reading. Because I have the same problem. If I'm not reading and then I sit down and I get a book, I feel really impatient. and I don't focus, and I sort of jump around and can't, I can't settle. It's like it's unnatural for me to read because I'm not in the habit of reading. And I'm guessing, but I think that's your problem. Right. Wookie says he's heard some seagulls. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. What have we got? Been told by teachers enjoying is the first thing. Dun, 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 dun. Have no problems with English. German's a challenge. Cinderella. Visual census. So Domenico Lafauci says the visual census is a type of underwater sampling method which involves Jesus Christ. Okay. Fantastic, Domenico. Oh, well, why don't you take 10 minutes out of your day and read an article by Krashen? Anouat says, reading is not my thing in my native language. Yes, that's it. That's the point, Anouat. And I think that is what I wanted to say to Kashata, because I think this is not an English issue. I think it's a reading issue. And I have the same reading. Pilly says, should we practice reading aloud? So I'm on the fence about this. I think if you're going to practice reading aloud, you should definitely focus on reading in a natural way. So what do I mean? Well, let's take an extract from Famous Five, Treasure Island, okay? So I'll take an extract from this book. Hopefully I can get a little section to read for you from Famous Five, Treasure Island. Jesus, come on, Amazon. Sometimes the Amazon algorithm just works, and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, great. Got it. Great. Okay, so listen. So I've got a little section here from Famous Five. Here's the text. Now listen. First, here is the correct way. This is the correct way to read out loud. Okay. Mother, have you heard about our summer holidays yet? Said Julian at the breakfast table. Can we go to Polseath as usual? I'm afraid not, said his mother. We're quite full up this year. The three children at the breakfast table looked at one another in great disappointment. They did so love the house at Polseath. The beach was so lovely there, and the bathing was fine. Cheer up, said Daddy. I dare say we'll find something else for you just as good. And anyway, Mother and I won't be able to go with you this year. Has she told you? No, said Anne. Mother, is it true? You can't come with us on holiday? You always do. Well, this time Daddy wants me to go to Scotland with him, said Mother, all by ourselves. And as you're getting really big enough to look after yourselves now, we thought it'd be rather fun for you to go on your own. Okay, so if you're reading out loud, that's the way to do it. And don't worry about saying every word correctly. I want you to focus more on speaking naturally than pronouncing every word, right? So just get the sense of what it says and then improvise in a natural way. Mother, have you heard about our summer holidays yet? Can we go to Polseath as usual? Right? Natural, right? What I don't want with reading out loud is this. Mother, have you heard about our summer holidays yet? Said Julian at the breakfast table. Can we go to Polseath as usual? I'm afraid not, said his mother. They are quite full up this year. The three children at the breakfast table looked at one another in great disappointment. So we don't want to overdo it. We don't want to overemphasize accuracy and word to word. Instead, I want you to try and tell the story in an improvisational, natural manner if you're speaking out loud. I hope that's clear. It's kind of difficult to explain, But that's what I mean. That's where the benefit of reading out loud comes from. It's doing it nice and naturally, like a storyteller. The English language has many Christian elements. Is it true? Yes, of course it is. I mean, look at the year. It's 2023. 2023 years since what? What happened 2023 years ago? That's one Christian element. Yeah, Kashata says, it's true, I'm not used to reading. I'll remember your advice. Yeah, exactly. And another thing is you can start reading more in your own language. That will help reading in English. But I would emphasize enjoyment. Get the books you enjoy. Don't force yourself to read really horrible, nasty, difficult stuff. I recommend Sherlock Holmes. I love Sherlock Holmes. How about read Sherlock Holmes in your own language? And then, when you finish, then read it in English. That's a nice task for you. Watch movies with English subtitles. That's a good way of improving reading and vocabulary. It's not a good way of improving comprehension, listening comprehension. Just so you know. Nipa says, bye for now. All right, see you later, Nipa. What does it mean, prosody? Prosody. What is prosody? Does it have the word here? What are we talking about, prosody? What do you mean the prosody? Prosody. What is prosody? Prosody? Did someone mention prosody? Prosody. Did someone mention prosody? Oh, do I mean the prosody? No, not just the prosody, which is, I've never heard that word before in my life, and I'm a linguist. The intonation. No, I don't only mean the intonation. I mean the rhythm and pronunciation and focusing on sort of acting in a natural way instead of saying exactly the words, right? So, like, if I have a sentence that says, if I have a sentence like that, would it all be possible for you to come to dinner tonight, my good chap? Right? Then I would rather you just say it in a natural way and improvise than get every word correct. So, for example, would it be possible for you to... No, that's wrong. See, I can feel when it's out of character. I've got a question. So, okay, I'm adding words. I've got a question, buddy. Do you think it'd be possible if you came to dinner tonight? There we go. Okay, so I changed the words, but I got that natural meaning. And that's more important when you're reading out loud, because now I'm practicing fluency. It's information in, fluency out. Not worrying about word to word. Okay, because word to word is not a natural way of expressing yourself. So information in, got it? Right. I got a question. Do you think it would be possible for you at all tonight to come to dinner? What do you think? Right, something like that. My teachers tell the story like this. Yeah, it's, you know what it is, if you mean synthetically, Pallavi, like, would it at all be possible for you to come to dinner tonight, my good chap? That's called bad acting. And it's not how people speak. And if you watch a good film, a good actor doesn't speak like that, do they? Because that's not how people speak in reality. It's like telling a story to a child. Elena says, thank you so much. No problem, Elena. We have to speak naturally in our homework. Oh, really? Oh, that's fantastic, Pallavi. You have good teachers. It's very, very rare. Very rare that we have people teaching in that way. You must have good teachers in language. Narrative tense is my cup of tea, says Manuel. Is that right, Manuel? Right, okay then, everybody. We are wrapping up because there's no more questions. So remember, check out the homework. I would like to see you in that. Do the homework today. The homework for today is this. So check that out. It'd be lovely to get some submissions. You send your homework to Professor Rich at gmail.com. It'd be really interesting if some of the old people who used to watch this channel 15 years ago came, because they were still here. They were still here a few years ago. I had comments from some people who were here from like day one, and I never see them in live chat. Anyway. Conversation class is going to be free this week again because I'm stupid. And that's on the 22nd of July, 3 p.m. It's a Zoom call. All you need is a microphone. Webcam would be great. And headphones. And you should join our English learners community because they're amazing. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely, lovely day. And I'll see you on Saturday when I'll be live with Oxford Online English and on Professor Rich. And then we have Communication Club. Thank you. Very much, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye now. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you soon. You think I should do a 24-hour stream? Where we cover like every bit of grammar in the English language. 24 hours. To be sponsored for charity. What do you think? I'll post about it in our English Learners chats. Anyway, that's me done for the day. Enjoy your day. Go have some food or rest or whatever.